The dust cloud appeared on the horizon just as Willa Jameson realized the stagecoach wasn't slowing down, and her heart dropped to her worn boots as she waved frantically at the driver, who seemed determined to leave her standing in the middle of the New Mexico desert like yesterday's trash. "Wait. Please," she screamed, running after the coach as it barreled past, her carpetbag clutched against her chest. The driver barely glanced her way, his weathered face set in grim determination as he cracked the whip over the horses. Through the dusty window, she caught sight of other passengers pressing their faces to the glass, their expressions a mixture of pity and relief that it wasn't them being left behind. Willa stumbled to a halt as the stagecoach disappeared into the shimmering heat waves, leaving her alone on a desolate stretch of road between Silver City and Hatchita. The year was 1883, and she had exactly $3 to her name, a half-empty canteen, and the fading hope that her journey west to start a new life as a schoolteacher wouldn't end with her bones bleaching in the sun. The sun beat down mercilessly on the back of her neck, and she quickly adjusted her bonnet, scanning the endless expanse of scrubland and rocky outcroppings. She had been running late this morning after the boarding house keeper insisted on payment before Willa could collect her belongings. That 5-minute delay had cost her everything. The stagecoach ran once a week, and she was expected in Hatchita tomorrow to begin her position at the schoolhouse. Willa started walking, her sensible boots already rubbing blisters on her heels. She had perhaps 15 miles ahead of her, and the afternoon sun showed no mercy. Sweat trickled down her spine beneath her modest blue travel dress, and she found herself rationing sips from her canteen after the first mile. She had been walking for nearly an hour when she heard the sound of hoofbeats behind her. Willa spun around, her hand instinctively clutching her bag tighter. In this lawless territory, a woman alone was vulnerable to all manner of dangers. But the rider approaching wasn't rushing toward her with menace. Instead, he maintained a steady pace, and as he drew closer, Willa could make out a tall figure atop a handsome chestnut mare. The rider pulled up beside her, and Willa found herself staring up at one of the most striking men she had ever seen. He was young, perhaps 25 to her 22 years, with sun-bronzed skin and dark hair that curled slightly beneath his worn Stetson. But it was his eyes that caught her attention, a warm brown that held genuine concern as he took in her predicament. "Madam," he said, tipping his hat. His voice was deep and smooth with the slight drawl of someone who had spent their life under western skies. "That stagecoach blow right past you." "It did," Willa admitted, trying to maintain her dignity despite her desperate situation. "I was delayed this morning and the driver refused to stop." The cowboy's jaw tightened, and something like anger flashed across his features. That would be Pete Henderson. Man's got a heart like a dried-up riverbed. He dismounted in one fluid motion, landing lightly on his boots despite his height. "Name's Samuel Jackson, but most folks call me Sam. I run cattle up near Hatchita." "Willa Jameson," she replied, offering her hand. When he took it, his palm was calloused but warm, and he held her hand with a gentleness that seemed at odds with his rugged appearance. "I'm meant to be the new schoolteacher there." Sam's eyes widened slightly. "Miss Jameson, the whole town's been talking about you for weeks. They are expecting you tomorrow." He looked down the empty road, then back at her with decision clear in his eyes. "That is a brutal walk in this heat. Please take Rosie here. She will get you to Hatchita safely." Willa blinked in surprise. "Your horse? But how will you get home?" "I will walk beside you," Sam said simply, as if offering to walk 15 miles through the desert was the most natural thing in the world. Cannot in good conscience leave a lady stranded, especially not the woman who is going to teach reading and writing to half the children in Grant County. I could not possibly ask you to walk that far, Willa protested, even as her feet throbbed in her boots. It is too much. Sam was already adjusting the stirrups to accommodate her shorter legs. You are not asking, Miss Jameson. I am offering. Truth be told, I was heading back to town anyway. Was up at my northern pasture checking on a pregnant cow. He patted Rosie's neck affectionately. This lady here could use a lighter load for once. I have been riding her hard all week. The gesture was so unexpectedly kind that Willa felt her eyes prickle with tears. She had left her family back in Missouri after her father's death left them in debt, hoping to send money home to her mother and younger siblings. The journey west had been fraught with delays, uncomfortable accommodations, and the constant worry that she was making a terrible mistake. This stranger's compassion felt like the first bit of good fortune she had encountered in months. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You are very kind, Mr. Jackson." "Sam," he corrected with a slight smile that transformed his serious face into something altogether more appealing. "And it is just common decency, though I will admit that seems in short supply out here sometimes." He helped her into the saddle, his hands steady at her waist, and Willa tried to ignore the flutter in her stomach at the contact. She settled onto Rosie's back, adjusting her skirts as modestly as possible, and Sam handed her the reins. "Just keep her at a walk," he instructed, starting down the road on foot. "She is gentle as a kitten, but she will try to convince you she needs to run. Do not let her fool you." As they began the long journey to Hatchita, Willa found herself stealing glances at the man walking beside her. He moved with an easy confidence, his long legs eating up the distance despite the heat. His shirt was dusty from a day's work, and she could see the muscles in his shoulders flex as he adjusted his hat against the sun. "Have you lived in Hatchita long?" she asked, needing to break the comfortable silence that had settled between them. "Born there," Sam replied. "My pa came out in the 50s, bought land when it was even wilder than it is now. He ran cattle, and I took over the ranch when he passed 3 years back." "I am sorry for your loss." Sam nodded his thanks. "He lived the life he wanted, died in his own bed at 62. Cannot ask for much more than that out here." He glanced up at her. "What about you, Miss Jameson? What brings a lady like yourself all the way out to New Mexico territory?" Willa hesitated, then decided honesty was the best policy. This man had given up his horse for her comfort. The least she could do was be truthful. "My father died last year. He had debts we did not know about, and suddenly my mother had 4 children to feed on nothing but air and hope. I saw an advertisement seeking a teacher, and the pay is good enough that I can send money home." Something like respect flickered in Sam's eyes. "That is a brave thing, leaving everything you know to help your family." "Or foolish," Willa said with a self-deprecating laugh. "I am not entirely certain which yet. Little bit of both, maybe," Sam said, and there was warmth in his voice. "But the best things in life usually are." They fell into conversation easily as the miles passed beneath them. Sam told her about Hatchita, a small town that had grown up around the railroad and mining operations. He described the residents with affection and occasional exasperation, painting a picture of a community that was rough around the edges but fundamentally decent. "You will like Mrs. Porter," he said. "She runs the boarding house where you will be staying. Bit nosy, but she has got a good heart. And her husband, Frank, he is the blacksmith. Built all the desks for the schoolhouse himself." "What about the children?" Willa asked. "How many students will I have?" "Last count was about 18, ranging from 6 to 14, Sam said. "Though that number might grow once folks realized we have got a real teacher. Last fellow only lasted 3 months before he decided prospecting for silver was more his calling." Willa laughed despite herself. "I promise I have no interest in silver mining." Good, because we desperately need someone who will stick around. Sam paused to take a drink from his own canteen, then offered it to her. The children deserve better than a string of teachers who treat the position like a way station. She accepted the canteen gratefully, trying not to think too hard about the intimacy of drinking from the same vessel. I intend to stay as long as they will have me. As the afternoon wore on, the heat became oppressive. Willa was grateful for Rosie's steady gait, though she felt increasingly guilty watching Sam walk mile after mile without complaint. His face was flushed from exertion, and she noticed him favoring his left leg slightly. "Mr. Jackson, Sam, please," she said finally. "At least ride for a while. We could take turns." "I am fine," Sam assured her, though she could hear the strain in his voice. "We are making good time. Should reach Hachita by nightfall. You are limping." Sam looked surprised that she had noticed. "Old injury. Acts up sometimes when I have been on horseback too long. Walking actually helps work out the stiffness." Willa was not entirely convinced, but she let the matter drop. Instead, she asked him more about the ranch, and his face lit up as he described the land he loved. He talked about the cattle drives, the struggle to find water during dry spells, the satisfaction of watching his herd grow year by year. His passion was evident in every word, and Willa found herself drawn to his dedication. "You manage the ranch alone?" she asked. "I've got 2 hired hands, Miguel and his son Carlos. Good men, hard workers." Sam's expression grew thoughtful. "It is a lot of work, more than 3 people can handle sometimes, but it is mine, you know. Every acre, every cow, every sunrise over those hills. My pa built something real, and I aim to honor that." There was something deeply attractive about a man who understood responsibility, who honored his commitments. Willa had known too many men back in Missouri who were quick to make promises, and even quicker to break them. Her own father, though she loved him dearly, had been reckless with money and left her mother to pick up the pieces. The sun was beginning its descent toward the horizon when they crested a rise, and Willa caught her first glimpse of Hachita. The town was larger than she had expected, with a main street lined with wooden buildings, several side streets branching off, and the unmistakable water tank and depot that marked it as a railroad town. "There she is," Sam said, and she could hear the pride in his voice. "Not much to look at compared to a Missouri city, I imagine, but it is home." "It looks wonderful," Willa said honestly. After hours in the empty desert, the sight of civilization was more beautiful than any grand boulevard. As they approached the town, several people stopped what they were doing to watch them pass. Willa was acutely aware of the picture they must make her riding while a cowboy walked beside her. She could see the curiosity on the faces of the townsfolk, the whispered conversations that started as soon as they passed. Sam led her directly to a 2-story building with a painted sign declaring it Porter's Boarding House. A plump woman with graying hair and sharp eyes came bustling out onto the porch before they could even dismount. "Samuel Jackson, is that the new teacher?" the woman demanded. "What on earth happened?" "Stagecoach left her stranded on the road, Mrs. Porter," Sam explained, helping Willa down from the saddle. Her legs trembled slightly after the long ride, and his steadying hand at her elbow was welcome. "Figured I had better make sure she got here in one piece." Mrs. Porter's eyes went wide. "Pete Henderson left a woman alone in the desert. That man's got no sense and even less decency." She turned her attention to Willa, looking her up and down with an appraising eye. "Well, come on then, dear. You look half dead on your feet. I have got your room ready, and supper will be on the table in an hour." "Thank you," Willa said. She turned to Sam, suddenly reluctant to say goodbye to the man who had shown her such unexpected kindness. "Mr. Jackson, I cannot thank you enough for your help today." You quite possibly saved my life." Sam's ears went slightly pink and he ducked his head. "Just doing what anyone would do, madam." "We both know that is not true," Willa said softly. "You gave up your own comfort to help a stranger. That speaks to your character." "Will you be at the church social on Sunday?" Sam asked suddenly, as if the words escaped before he could stop them. "Welcome the new teacher properly. Let you meet more folks." "I would like that very much," Willa replied, and the smile he gave her made her breath catch. After Sam left, leading Rosie toward what she assumed was the livery stable, Mrs. Porter ushered Willa inside with a knowing look that suggested she had observed every nuance of their interaction. "That Sam Jackson is one of the finest young men in this territory," the landlady said as she led Willa up the stairs. "Lost his pa young, but he stepped up and made something of himself. Half the unmarried women in 3 counties have set their caps for him, but he never gives them a second glance." Willa felt her cheeks warm. "He was very kind to me today. Kind does not even begin to cover it, dear." Mrs. Porter opened a door to reveal a small but clean room with a bed, washstand, and window overlooking the main street. "Walking 15 miles in this heat while giving up his horse. That is the action of a man who is interested, mark my words." "We only just met," Willa protested weakly. "Sometimes that is all it takes." The older woman patted her hand. "Now wash up and rest a bit before supper. You have had quite a day." After Mrs. Porter left, Willa sank onto the bed, her mind whirling. She had come west to work, to help her family, not to entangle herself with a cowboy. And yet, she could not stop thinking about Sam's steady presence beside her, the way he had given up his own comfort without hesitation, the warmth in his eyes when he looked at her. She stood and went to the washstand, pouring water from the pitcher into the basin. As she cleaned the dust from her face and hands, she caught sight of herself in the small mirror above the stand. Her cheeks were flushed, partly from the sun but partly from something else entirely. She looked different somehow, more alive than she had in months. "Do not be foolish," she told her reflection firmly. "You are here to teach, nothing more." But as she unpinned her hair and began to brush out the tangles, she could not quite convince herself that was true. Supper at the boarding house was a lively affair. Besides Mrs. Porter and her husband Frank, a quiet man with massive hands and a gentle demeanor, there were 3 other boarders. A surveyor passing through on his way to Arizona, an older woman who worked at the general store, and a young clerk from the mining office. All of them wanted to hear about her journey and her encounter with Sam Jackson. Willa found herself recounting the story, though she downplayed the romance that Mrs. Porter seemed determined to find in every detail. "Pete Henderson ought to be horsewhipped," Frank Porter declared, his deep voice startling everyone at the table. "He rarely spoke, so when he did, people listened. Leaving a lady alone like that, it is not right." "Sam certainly thought so," the store clerk, a man named Thomas, said with a grin. "I saw him when he dropped his horse at the stable. Man looked like he had walked through fire, but he was smiling like he had struck gold." Willa focused intently on her plate, hoping no one would notice her flaming cheeks. After supper, exhausted from the day's events, she retired to her room. But sleep did not come easily. She kept replaying the hours she had spent with Sam, the easy way they had talked, as if they had known each other for years rather than hours. She thought about his dedication to his family's legacy, his willingness to help without expecting anything in return, the way his whole face had transformed when he smiled. When she finally drifted off, she dreamed of brown eyes and dusty roads, and a voice saying her name like it was something precious. The next morning, Willa woke early and dressed in her best day dress, a sensible gray cotton with minimal trim. Today, she would see the schoolhouse and begin preparing for her students. Mrs. Porter provided a hearty breakfast and directions to the school, which sat at the edge of town near the small, whitewashed church. The schoolhouse was a simple one-room building, but someone had clearly taken pride in its construction. The desks Frank Porter had built were sturdy and well-made, arranged in neat rows facing a blackboard that, while not new, was certainly serviceable. There was a small desk for her at the front, a bookshelf with a meager collection of texts, and windows on two sides that let in plenty of light. Willa spent the morning cleaning and organizing, making lists of supplies she would need, planning her first lessons. She was so absorbed in her work that she did not hear the door open behind her. Looks like the place is in good hands. She spun around to find Sam standing in the doorway, hat in his hands, looking somehow different in the morning light. He had clearly cleaned up since yesterday, his dark hair still damp, his shirt fresh though well worn. "Sam," she said, and hated how breathless she sounded. "I did not expect to see you. Brought you something," he said, stepping into the room. He held out a bundle wrapped in cloth. "Books. They were my mother's. She passed when I was young, but Pa made sure I learned to read from them. Thought maybe your students could get some use out of them." Willa unwrapped the bundle carefully and found herself holding a collection of well-loved books. A primer, a volume of poetry, several novels, and a beautiful illustrated edition of Aesop's Fables. "These are precious," she said softly, running her fingers over the worn covers. "Are you certain you want to part with them? Ma would have wanted them used, not sitting on a shelf collecting dust." Sam moved closer, looking around the schoolhouse with interest. "This place looks different already. You have got a good hand for organization." "It is what I love about teaching," Willa admitted. "Taking chaos and finding the order in it, helping young minds discover how much they are capable of learning." Sam studied her with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. "You really care about this, don't you? It is not just a job to you." "Education changed my life," Willa said. "My teacher in Missouri saw something in me, encouraged me to keep learning even when my parents thought it was unnecessary for a girl. She is the reason I am here, able to help my family. I want to give these children the same opportunity." "They are lucky to have you," Sam said quietly. "We all are." The moment stretched between them, charged with something Willa could not quite name. She was acutely aware of how close he stood, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes, the faint scar along his jawline that she had not noticed yesterday. "Will you really be at the church social on Sunday?" Sam asked, his voice lower than before. "Or were you just being polite?" "I will be there," Willa assured him. "I need to meet the parents of my students, and Mrs. Porter says it is the best way to become part of the community. Would you let me escort you?" The words came out in a rush, as if he had been working up the courage to ask. "I know we only just met, and I do not want to presume, but I would like to spend more time with you, if that is all right." Willa knew she should be cautious, should maintain proper boundaries. But when she looked at Sam, she saw only sincerity and a hope that mirrored her own unexpected feelings. "I would like that very much," she said. The smile that lit Sam's face was worth any risk to her heart. Over the next few days, Willa threw herself into preparations for the school term. She met with several parents who brought their children by to introduce them, and she was pleased to find that most of the youngsters seemed genuinely excited about having a new teacher. The children ranged from shy 6-year-olds to skeptical 14-year-olds who had seen too many teachers come and go. But in the evenings, when her work was done, she found herself watching the street from her boarding house window, hoping for a glimpse of a tall cowboy on a chestnut mare. Sam stopped by the schoolhouse twice more during the week, once to help her hang a map of the United States that Mr. Porter had found in his workshop, and once simply to bring her a jar of honey from a neighbor who kept bees. Each visit was brief, but left Willa counting the hours until she would see him again. They talked easily about everything and nothing: his work on the ranch, her plans for the school, their childhoods, their dreams for the future. She learned that he wanted to expand his herd, maybe buy the adjoining property if it ever came up for sale. He learned that she had always wanted to write a book someday, though she laughed at herself for the ambition. "Why is that funny?" Sam asked, genuinely puzzled. "You are smart and well-spoken. Why should you not write a book?" "Because I am a schoolteacher from Missouri who could barely afford the Stagecoach fare west," Willa said. "Not exactly the background of a famous author." "Everyone has to start somewhere," Sam pointed out. "And I bet you have got stories worth telling after your journey out here." His faith in her was intoxicating. Back home, her dreams had been considered frivolous at best, dangerous at worst. But Sam listened to her talk about her ambitions as if they were the most natural thing in the world. Sunday arrived bright and clear, with a breeze that took the edge off the September heat. Willa dressed carefully in her best Sunday dress, a soft blue cotton with lace at the collar and cuffs that her mother had insisted she pack. She pinned her honey-colored hair up carefully, allowing a few curls to frame her face, and studied her reflection with unusual nervousness. "You look lovely, dear," Mrs. Porter said approvingly when Willa came downstairs. "Sam Jackson is not going to know what hit him." "It is just a church social," Willa protested, but she could not hide her smile. Sam arrived precisely on time, and Willa's breath caught when she saw him. He wore clean trousers, a white shirt that made his tanned skin seem even darker, and a vest that had been carefully brushed free of dust. His hair was neatly combed, and he held his hat almost nervously as Mrs. Porter ushered him inside. "Miss Jameson," he said formally, but his eyes were warm. "You look beautiful." "Thank you," Willa managed, accepting the arm he offered. "You look very handsome yourself." The walk to the church was short, but Willa was aware of every eye that tracked their progress. In a town as small as Hatcheta, the arrival of a new teacher was news enough. The fact that she was being escorted by one of the most eligible bachelors in the county made it the subject of intense speculation. The social was held in a cleared area beside the church, with tables laden with food and clusters of people talking and laughing. Children ran between the adults, playing tag and generally causing cheerful chaos. Sam guided her through the crowd, introducing her to what seemed like half the territory. She met the mayor, a jovial man named Clarence Whitmore, who pumped her hand enthusiastically and welcomed her to Hatcheta. She met the doctor, a serious young man named Patterson who had only been in town a year longer than her. She met ranchers and miners, shopkeepers and housewives, all of them curious about the new teacher and her unlikely friendship with Sam Jackson. Miguel and Carlos, Sam's ranch hands, were there with their large extended family. Miguel was a weathered man in his 50s with kind eyes, and Carlos was close to Sam's age, with a quick smile and an easier manner than his father. They both greeted Willa warmly, and she sensed genuine affection between them and Sam. "The boss talked about nothing but you all week," Carlos said with a teasing grin, earning himself an elbow in the ribs from Sam. "Do not listen to him," Sam said, his ears reddening. "He is making things up." "Am I?" Carlos looked at Willa with dancing eyes. "Did I imagine him whistling while he mended fence? Because Sam never whistles. He is usually grumpy as a bear with a sore paw." "I am standing right here," Sam said, but there was no real annoyance in his voice. Willa found herself laughing, charmed by the easy camaraderie between the men. It was clear that Sam treated his employees more like family than hired help, and they returned his respect in full measure. As the afternoon wore on, Willa relaxed into the rhythm of the social. She found herself genuinely enjoying the company of the townspeople, who were warmer and more welcoming than she had dared to hope. Several mothers sought her out to discuss their children, and she had productive conversations about the curriculum and her teaching philosophy. But through it all, she was aware of Sam nearby. He never hovered, gave her space to make her own connections, but whenever she looked around, he was there. Watching her with those warm brown eyes, smiling when she caught his gaze, ready to step in if she needed him but confident enough to let her stand on her own. When the sun began to sink toward the horizon and the musicians struck up a tune, Sam appeared at her elbow. "Would you dance with me?" he asked, offering his hand. Willa placed her hand in his, letting him lead her to the cleared space where other couples were already swaying to the music. It was a simple waltz, nothing fancy, but when Sam's arm settled around her waist and he drew her close, Willa felt like she was dancing at the finest ball in Missouri. "I am not very good at this," Sam admitted, concentrating on his steps. "Ma died before she could teach me proper, and Pa was not much for dancing." "You are doing fine," Willa assured him. "Better than fine, actually." They moved together in comfortable silence for a moment, and then Sam spoke, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "I need to tell you something, Willa. May I call you Willa?" "Yes," she said, her heart beginning to pound. "I know we have only known each other less than a week," Sam continued. "And I know you came here to teach, not to be courted by some cowboy with more land than sense. But I cannot stop thinking about you. From the moment I saw you on that road, determined and brave even though you must have been terrified, I felt something. And every time I see you, every time we talk, that feeling gets stronger." Willa's breath caught. "Sam, I am not asking for promises," he said quickly. "I know it is too soon for that, but I would like permission to court you proper. Take you to dinner, maybe go for rides on Sunday afternoons, let you get to know me better. And if, at the end of it, you decide I am not what you want, I will accept that. But I have to try, Willa. I have to know if what I am feeling might be something you feel too." They had stopped dancing, standing still while other couples moved around them. Willa looked up into Sam's earnest face and felt something settle into place in her chest, something that felt like coming home. "I feel it too," she admitted softly. "I have been trying not to, telling myself I came here for my students, for my family. But every time I see you, Sam Jackson, I forget all my sensible reasons for keeping my distance. Yes, you may court me. I would like that very much." The joy that spread across Sam's face was beautiful to see. He pulled her close again, resuming their dance, and Willa rested her head against his shoulder, breathing in the scent of soap and sun-warmed cotton. "You have made me very happy," Sam murmured into her hair. "You gave me your horse and walked 15 miles in the desert for me," Willa replied. How could I not want to know more about a man like that? The rest of the social passed in a happy blur. When Sam walked her back to the boarding house as darkness fell, he held her hand openly, no longer caring who saw. At the door, he lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles that sent warmth flooding through her. "May I see you tomorrow?" he asked. "I start teaching tomorrow," Willa reminded him. "But perhaps in the evening." "I will be here," Sam promised, and he was. Every evening that week, after Willa finished with her students and completed her lesson planning, Sam appeared to walk with her around town or sit on the boarding house porch, talking until the stars came out. They were never alone, Mrs. Porter saw to that, playing chaperone with cheerful determination, but Willa found that she did not mind. Just being near Sam was enough. She learned more about him with each passing day. He told her about his mother, who had died of fever when he was 8, leaving his father to raise him alone. He talked about the loneliness of growing up on an isolated ranch, how he had longed for siblings, but learned to find companionship in his animals and the land itself. In turn, she told him about her family, about her father's gambling debts that had destroyed their comfortable life, about her mother's quiet strength in the face of disaster, about her siblings whom she missed desperately. She showed him the letters she wrote home every week, and Sam listened with genuine interest as she read her mother's responses. Her students, meanwhile, proved to be everything she had hoped for and more. They were eager, curious, and surprisingly well-behaved considering the parade of inadequate teachers they had endured. Little Emma Richards, a 6-year-old with braids and a gap-toothed smile, attached herself to Willa immediately. The older boys, initially skeptical, warmed to her after she proved she could discuss ranching and mining with actual knowledge rather than dismissing their interests as unimportant. She incorporated practical lessons arithmetic, using cattle prices, geography through discussing the railroad routes, history by connecting local events to the broader sweep of the nation's development. Her students responded enthusiastically, and within 2 weeks, she had 3 more children whose parents had decided education might be worthwhile after all. 1 month into her tenure in Hachita, Willa realized she was happier than she had been in years. Her students were thriving, she had made genuine friends among the townspeople, and her courtship with Sam had become the source of constant joy. They had fallen into a comfortable routine. Sam stopped by the schoolhouse most afternoons to walk her home, often bringing small gifts, wildflowers, a book he thought she might like, a new hair ribbon in blue that matched her eyes. On Sundays, after church, they would go for rides on Rosie, with Willa seated on the horse and Sam walking beside her, just as they had that first day. It became their private joke, their special tradition. Sam insisted that Willa needed to experience the land properly, needed to see his ranch and the wild country beyond town. And so, every Sunday, they would set out with a picnic basket packed by Mrs. Porter, and Sam would walk beside her for miles, pointing out landmarks and telling her stories about the territory. On one such Sunday in mid-October, with the air finally cooling and the light taking on a golden autumn quality, Sam led her to a spot on his ranch where a natural spring created a small oasis of green among the brown landscape. Cottonwood trees provided shade, and the sound of running water was a soothing contrast to the usual desert silence. "This is beautiful," Willa breathed, dismounting from Rosie with Sam's help. "How did you find this place?" "Pa showed it to me when I was a boy," Sam said, tethering Rosie to a tree branch. "He said every good rancher needs a spot where he can think, away from the work and worry. This was his." They spread a blanket beneath the trees and unpacked the picnic. Mrs. Porter had outdone herself with fried chicken, fresh bread, cheese, and apple pie. They ate in comfortable silence, watching the play of sunlight on the water. "I got a letter from my mother yesterday," Willa said eventually. "She says my sister has got a position as a seamstress, and my brother found work at the mill. The money I have been sending has made a real difference. They might be able to keep the house after all." "That is wonderful news," Sam said warmly. "You must be relieved." "I am," Willa agreed. "But also a bit sad. I left home thinking I would return once I had earned enough to help them get back on their feet, but now I am not sure I want to go back." Sam's expression became very still. "What do you mean?" Willa took a breath, gathering her courage. "I mean that I have built a life here, Sam. My students need me and I have responsibilities to them, and there are other reasons I might want to stay." "What reasons?" Sam asked softly, moving closer. "You know what reasons," Willa said, her cheeks warming. We have been courting for over a month now, Sam. Surely you must know how I feel about you." Sam reached out and took her hand, threading his fingers through hers. "I know how I hope you feel, but I need to hear you say it, Willa. I need to be certain." She turned to face him fully, looking into those brown eyes that had become so dear to her. "I love you, Samuel Jackson. I did not mean to fall in love with you. I told myself I came here to work, to be sensible and practical. But then you gave me your horse and walked beside me, and you have been walking beside me ever since. You are the kindest, most honorable man I have ever known, and I cannot imagine my life without you in it." The joy on Sam's face was incandescent. He raised her hand to his lips, kissing it reverently, then each fingertip in turn. "I love you too, Willa Jameson. I think I have loved you since the moment you kept walking in that desert heat, refusing to give up even when everything looked hopeless. You are brave and smart and beautiful, and you make me want to be a better man." "You are already the best man I know," Willa whispered. Sam cupped her face in his calloused hands, his thumbs brushing her cheekbones. "Marry me," he said. "I know it is quick, and I know we should probably wait longer to be proper. But I am 30 years old, Willa, and I have never felt for anyone what I feel for you. I want to wake up beside you every morning, want to build a life with you, want to fill that big, empty ranch house with children and laughter and love. Marry me, and I promise I will spend every day trying to make you as happy as you have made me." Tears pricked Willa's eyes. "What about my teaching? I made a commitment to those children." "Keep teaching," Sam said immediately. "The schoolhouse is only 2 miles from the ranch. You can ride Rosie there and back every day, or we will get you your own horse when you can actually ride instead of me walking beside it." He smiled. "Though I will miss our Sunday tradition, we can still do it," Willa said, laughing through her tears. "Maybe not every week, but sometimes, to remember how we began." "Is that a yes?" Sam asked, hope and nervousness warring in his expression. "Will you marry me, Willa?" "Yes," she said, and then louder with certainty and joy. "Yes, Sam, I will marry you." He kissed her then, gentle and sweet beneath the cottonwood trees, and Willa felt the last piece of her new life click into place. She had come west alone and uncertain, left behind in the dust by a careless stagecoach driver. But she had been found by a cowboy who gave her his horse and walked beside her, and in doing so, had walked straight into her heart. They were married 6 weeks later in the small white church, with what seemed like the entire town in attendance. Willa wore a simple white dress that Mrs. Porter had helped her alter from one of the landlady's own wedding gowns, and Sam wore a new suit that Carlos swore made him look almost civilized. Miguel walked Willa down the aisle in place of her absent father, his eyes suspiciously bright, and Carlos stood up as Sam's best man. Mrs. Porter sobbed happily through the entire ceremony, and even stoic Frank Porter had to wipe his eyes when Sam and Willa exchanged their vows. The reception was held at the boarding house, with tables groaning under the weight of food that the townspeople had contributed. There was music and dancing, and Sam danced every dance with his new wife, no longer self-conscious about his steps. As the evening drew to a close and they prepared to leave for the ranch, Willa found herself surrounded by her students, all of them clamoring to say goodbye to their beloved teacher. "You will be back Monday, won't you, Mrs. Jackson?" little Emma asked anxiously. "Of course I will," Willa assured her, hugging the child close. "I am not going anywhere. I just live at the ranch now instead of at Mrs. Porter's house. And you will still teach us?" asked Timothy, one of the older boys who had been skeptical of her at first but had become one of her most dedicated students. "For as long as you will have me," Willa promised. Sam helped her into a small wagon decorated with ribbons and tin cans, and they set off for the ranch amid cheers and good wishes. The night was clear and cool, with a million stars overhead, and Willa leaned against her husband's shoulder, marveling at how much her life had changed in just 3 months. "Happy?" Sam asked, dropping a kiss on top of her head. "Deliriously," Willa replied. "Though I never imagined I would be a ranch wife when I left Missouri." "You are not just a ranch wife," Sam corrected gently. "You are a teacher and a writer someday if you want to be, and the woman I love beyond measure. Being my wife is just one part of who you are, Willa. I would never want to limit you." She tilted her face up for a proper kiss, which Sam provided happily. "How did I get so lucky?" she murmured. "I ask myself that every day," Sam replied. "Though I think luck had less to do with it than a stagecoach driver with no soul and a horse who needed a lighter load." Willa laughed. "We should send Pete Henderson a thank you note. If he had not left me in the dust, we never would have met." "True," Sam agreed. "Though I still think he is a terrible human being." The ranch house, when they arrived, was lit with lanterns that Miguel and Carlos had left burning in welcome. It was a solid, well-built home with 4 bedrooms, a large kitchen, a parlor, and a wide porch that wrapped around 3 sides. Sam carried Willa over the threshold, both of them laughing, and set her down gently in the center of the parlor. "Welcome home, Mrs. Jackson," he said. Willa looked around at the house that would be hers now, at the life she had found in the most unexpected way, and felt a sense of rightness that went bone deep. "Home," she repeated, savoring the word. "Yes, this is home." The first months of their marriage were an adjustment for both of them. Willa had to learn the rhythms of ranch life, the early mornings and the physical demands of maintaining a large property. Sam had to get used to sharing his space, to considering someone else's needs and preferences instead of just his own. But they were both committed to making it work, and they approached their marriage with the same determination they brought to everything else. Willa continued teaching, riding Rosie to school each morning and returning in the afternoon to help with ranch chores. She proved surprisingly adept at ranch management, taking over the bookkeeping and discovering that Sam had been systematically undercharging for his cattle. "You are running a business, not a charity," she scolded gently, showing him her calculations. "These are fair prices, Sam. You deserve to be compensated fairly for your work." Sam kissed her nose. "You are terrifying when you talk about numbers." "You married a schoolteacher," Willa reminded him. "Mathematics are part of the package." Under Willa's management, the ranch began to show a profit for the first time in years. Sam was able to hire another hand and buy the breeding stock he had long coveted. The ranch grew and thrived, and so did their marriage. In the evenings, after supper, they would sit together on the porch, watching the sun set over the land Sam loved. Willa would grade papers while Sam mended tack or whittled, and they would talk about their days, their dreams, their plans for the future. "I have been thinking," Willa said one evening in the spring of 1884, about 6 months after their wedding, "about what you said, about filling this house with children." Sam's hand stilled on the bridle he was repairing. "Yes. I think we should start trying," Willa said, feeling her cheeks warm despite their intimacy. "I love teaching, but I also want to be a mother, and I think you will make a wonderful father." Sam set aside his work and pulled her into his arms. "Are you certain?" "I know teaching means everything to you." "It means a great deal," Willa corrected. "But it is not everything. You are. This life we are building is. And I want our children to grow up here on this land surrounded by love and possibility." "Then we will start trying," Sam agreed, happiness radiating from him. "And whatever happens, whenever it happens, we will face it together." Their first child, a son they named Samuel James Jackson after both his father and grandfather, was born in February of 1885. Willa took a brief leave from teaching, but by April, she was back in the schoolhouse with baby Samuel sleeping in a basket near her desk. The students were enchanted with their teacher's baby, and the older girls particularly took turns helping rock the basket when Samuel fussed. Sam proved to be a devoted father, often riding in from the range during his lunch break just to hold his son for a few minutes. He would sit on the schoolhouse steps with Samuel in his arms, talking softly to the baby about cattle and horses and the land that would one day be his. 2 years later, their daughter was born, and they named her Ruth Margaret after both their mothers. Ruth was a lively, determined child from the start, with her mother's blue eyes and her father's stubborn chin. She toddled around the ranch as soon as she could walk, following her father everywhere and insisting on helping with even the most mundane tasks. Willa eventually hired an assistant teacher, a young woman named Clara who had recently arrived in Hatchita and needed work. This allowed Willa to spend more time at the ranch while still overseeing the school's curriculum and visiting several times a week to teach advanced lessons to the older students. The ranch continued to prosper. Sam's reputation as a fair dealer and a good rancher spread throughout the territory, and he was able to purchase the adjoining land when it came available in 1888. Miguel's son Carlos married a local girl and built his own house on the ranch property, becoming a full partner in the operation. The ranch became known as the Jackson Gutierrez Ranch, a partnership that honored the contributions of both families. Willa never forgot her own family back in Missouri. She continued to send money home regularly, even after her mother wrote that they were managing well enough on their own. When her youngest brother expressed an interest in ranching, Sam immediately offered him a position. An 18-year-old Willa Jameson arrived in Hatchita in 1889, eager to learn from his brother-in-law. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Sam surprised Willa by arranging for her mother and 2 sisters to visit Hatchita. The reunion was tearful and joyous, with Willa's mother exclaiming over her grandchildren and marveling at the life her daughter had built. "You did it," her mother said one evening as they sat on the porch watching Sam play with the children in the yard. "You saved us, and you built something beautiful for yourself at the same time." "I got lucky," Willa said. "A stagecoach driver abandoned me and a cowboy found me." "That was not luck, darling," her mother replied. "That was fate. Anyone can see how much that man loves you, and more importantly, how much he respects you. You are partners in every sense of the word." Willa watched Sam toss Samuel into the air, the boy's delighted shrieks filling the evening air while little Ruth tugged on her father's pants leg demanding her turn. "Yes," she agreed softly, "we are partners." The years passed in the way of happy lives, measured in small moments rather than grand gestures. Willa's school produced a generation of educated children, several of whom went on to attend university, something that would have been unthinkable before her arrival. The ranch became one of the most successful in the territory, known for quality cattle and fair dealing. In 1890, when New Mexico was still years away from statehood, Sam was elected to the territorial legislature, a position he held with the same integrity he brought to everything else. He fought for better schools, for fair treatment of Mexican and Native American residents, for conservation of the fragile desert ecosystem that sustained them all. Willa was his closest advisor, drafting speeches and helping him navigate the complex politics of the territory. Their 3rd child, another son named William after Willa's brother, was born in 1891. And their 4th and final child, a daughter named Margaret but called Maggie, arrived in 1894 when Willa was 33 and announced firmly that 4 children were quite enough. "Thank you very much." Through it all, Sam and Willa maintained the traditions they had established during their courtship. Every Sunday afternoon, when work permitted, Sam would walk beside Willa as she rode Rosie to their special spot by the spring. The children would run ahead or trail behind, depending on their ages and moods, and they would spend the afternoon together as a family. As the children grew older, they would sometimes ask their parents to tell the story of how they met. Sam and Willa never tired of recounting that day in the desert, though they took turns adding embellishments and teasing each other about who was more smitten at first sight. "Your mother was so dusty and cross," Sam would say, his eyes twinkling. Standing there in the middle of the road, shaking her fist at that disappearing stagecoach. "And your father took one look at me and decided to walk 15 miles through the desert," Willa would counter. "I think that says who was more smitten." "I gave you my horse," Sam would point out. "Best decision you ever made," Willa would reply, kissing his cheek. On their 20th wedding anniversary in 1904, the town of Hachita threw them a celebration. The schoolhouse was packed with former students, many now grown with children of their own, all eager to thank the teacher who had changed their lives. Sam's partners and employees spoke about his fairness and generosity. Friends and neighbors recounted stories of kindnesses large and small. But the most moving tribute came from little Emma Richards, no longer little at 27, now Emma Wheeler with 3 children of her own. "Mrs. Jackson taught me that being a girl did not mean I could not learn anything I set my mind to," Emma said, her voice strong and clear. "She taught me to read when I was 6, and now I read to my own children every night. Mr. Jackson gave our teacher his horse that first day and walked beside her, and he has been walking beside all of us ever since, showing us what it means to be a good man, a good neighbor, a good citizen. This town is better because of both of them, and I am better because they were part of my life." Willa cried, of course, and Sam held her hand tightly, his own eyes suspiciously bright. Later, as they danced together in the same spot where they had shared their first dance 20 years earlier, Sam pulled her close and whispered in her ear. "I would do it all again," he said. "Walk 1,000 miles through the desert if it meant finding you at the end." "You gave me everything," Willa replied. "Your horse, your home, your heart. You walked beside me when I needed support, and you stepped back when I needed to stand on my own. You made me feel safe and challenged and cherished all at once. How could I not love you for the rest of my life?" "Only the rest of your life," Sam teased. "I was hoping for longer than that." "Forever, then," Willa agreed, resting her head on his shoulder as they swayed to the music. "I will love you forever, Samuel Jackson." As they grew older, Sam and Willa gradually handed over more of the ranch responsibilities to their children and partners. Young Samuel, now everyone called him James to avoid confusion with his father, showed the same dedication to the land that his grandfather and father had demonstrated. Ruth married a local lawyer and became a fierce advocate for women's suffrage, making her mother proud. William surprised everyone by becoming a writer, publishing well-received novels about life in the West. And Maggie took over the schoolhouse when Willa finally retired in 1910, at the age of 49, continuing her mother's legacy. Sam and Willa spent their later years traveling, something they had never had time to do while raising children and running a ranch. They visited Missouri so Willa could see her childhood home again. They went to San Francisco and marveled at the rebuilding after the great earthquake. They even took a trip to New York City, though both agreed they preferred the wide open spaces of New Mexico. But no matter where they went, they always came back to Hachita, to the ranch that Sam's father had built and that they had grown together. They would sit on their porch in the evenings, older now but still holding hands, still talking about everything and nothing, still finishing each other's sentences. On a cool evening in November of 1925, when Sam was 67 and Willa was 64, they sat together, watching the sunset paint the desert in shades of gold and crimson. Their children and grandchildren were gathering for Thanksgiving, and the house was already filling up with noise and laughter. "Did you ever imagine," Willa asked, "that first day when Pete Henderson left me in the dust, that it would lead to all of this?" Sam considered the question seriously, as he always did when she asked him something important. "No," he admitted finally. "I just saw a woman who needed help, and I knew I could provide it. I never imagined I would find my whole life standing on that dusty road." "I was so angry at Pete Henderson," Willa recalled with a smile. "I thought he had ruined everything." "He did ruin everything," Sam pointed out. "He ruined your plans to be a lonely spinster schoolteacher who sent all her money home and never had a life of her own." Willa laughed and swatted his arm. "I never said I planned to be a spinster. You were certainly headed that way, being all practical and sensible." Sam pulled her closer, kissing her temple. "Thank God for reckless stagecoach drivers and a man foolish enough to give up his horse for a pretty face." "Is that all I was? A pretty face?" "You were everything," Sam said simply. "You still are. You are my partner, my love, my best friend. You are the reason I wake up happy every morning and go to bed grateful every night. You took a lonely cowboy and taught him what it means to truly live." Tears pricked Willa's eyes, even after all these years. "You gave me your horse and walked beside me," she said softly. "And you have been walking beside me ever since. Through every joy, every challenge, every triumph and setback, you never left me behind, Sam. Not once in 42 years. "Never will," Sam promised. "We walk together or not at all." As the sun finally slipped below the horizon and the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, they heard the sound of their grandchildren calling for them. Young Emma Ruth Jackson Wheeler, named for both her mother and Willa's first student, came running out onto the porch. "Grandma, Grandpa, dinner is ready. And Grandma, will you tell us the story again, about the stagecoach and the horse?" Willa and Sam exchanged a glance, sharing a smile that held 4 decades of love and understanding. "Of course, sweetheart," Willa said, standing and offering her hand to Sam. "But your grandfather tells it better. He remembers all the best parts." "We will tell it together," Sam said, taking her hand and rising to his feet with only a slight stiffness that betrayed his age. "The way we do everything." They walked into the house together, surrounded by the noise and warmth of the family they had created, the life they had built from a chance meeting on a dusty road. Behind them, the New Mexico desert stretched out under a canopy of stars, timeless and beautiful. The stagecoach driver had left her in the dust all those years ago, but the cowboy had given her his horse and walked beside her. And in doing so, he had given her everything that truly mattered: love, partnership, purpose, and a home in the wild heart of the West. They had walked together through 42 years of marriage, through the joys of raising children and the sorrows of losing friends, through the triumph of watching their family thrive and the quiet satisfaction of building something lasting. They had walked through the transformation of New Mexico from territory to state in 1912, through world wars and economic changes, through the slow march of progress that brought automobiles and electricity to even remote places like Hachita. And they would continue walking together, hand in hand, for all the days that remained to them. Because that was what love meant. Not grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but the simple, profound commitment to keep showing up, day after day, to walk beside your partner through whatever life might bring. The stagecoach driver had left Willa Jameson in the dust on a hot September day in 1883. But Samuel Jackson had given her his horse, had walked beside her through the desert heat, and in doing so had walked straight into her heart. And there he remained, 42 years later, as constant and dependable as the land itself, as necessary to her as breath. It was, Willa thought as she watched her husband help their youngest grandchild into a chair at the dinner table, the greatest love story she had ever known. And she had lived every word of it. They lived many more years together, Sam and Willa Jackson, adding more chapters to their remarkable story. They celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary surrounded by children, grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren. They saw the world change in ways they could never have imagined that day on the desert road, but through it all, they remained constant to each other. When Sam finally passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 79, Willa mourned him deeply, but without regret. They had been given 54 years together, years filled with love and laughter, challenges and triumphs. She had been blessed beyond measure. Willa lived another 5 years after Sam's death, spending her time with her family and working on a book about her experiences as a teacher in the early days of New Mexico. The book was published in 1938, when she was 77, and became a modest success, fulfilling the dream she had shared with Sam so many years ago. When Willa Jackson passed away in 1939, surrounded by her children and grandchildren, her last words were about Sam. "Tell your grandfather I am coming," she whispered to her daughter Ruth. "Tell him I am ready to walk beside him again." They buried her next to Sam on a hill overlooking the ranch, with a simple headstone that bore both their names and a single inscription chosen by their children. They walked together through life, partners in all things, bound by love eternal. And if you visit Hatchita, New Mexico, even today, old-timers will tell you the story of the schoolteacher and the cowboy, of how a stagecoach driver's callousness led to one of the great love stories of the Old West. They will tell you how Sam Jackson gave up his horse and walked 15 miles through the desert beside Willa Jameson, and how that single act of kindness blossomed into a love that sustained them both for more than half a century. It is a story worth remembering, a reminder that sometimes our greatest blessings come disguised as disasters, and that true love is found not in grand romantic gestures, but in the quiet commitment to walk beside someone, day after day, through all the joys and sorrows that life may bring. The stagecoach driver left her in the dust, but the cowboy gave her his horse and walked beside her, and in doing so, gave her a love that would last not just a lifetime, but for all the generations that came after, a legacy of devotion that would be remembered long after both of them had returned to the desert dust from which all life springs.